Hey guys, it's Keith. I'm going to take this political online quiz today. I like to take this every now and again just to see where I stand. I just saw a lot of old friends from university. We went to Berkeley, and I was pretty radically left back then, and I've slowly become more and more centrist, even agreeing with some conservative points and values. Partly that's age. Partly that's, I think, in my opinion, the left moving too far left. But I just thought I would take this test today and just see where I stand now. It's 70 questions. I'm not going to spend as much time as I often do on each question. I'm just going to try and move through it. I don't feel that great and that up for this. I'm not feeling energetic and enthusiastic about this, but I thought it would be a nice mood shake-up for me. So let's get started. Question 1 of 70. To chase progress at all costs is dangerous. Definitely. I mean, Mao, Stalin, those are easy examples. I fully agree. Religion should play a role in government. Hard disagree. Governments should be as concerned about foreigners as they are about their own citizens. Oddly phrased question. In terms of the well-being, I suppose that means, then I disagree. I think I'll strongly disagree. Like, what is the point of a government but to represent its citizens? We should open our borders to immigration. Nicely vague question, really getting to something here. I live in the US. I've lived in Germany. Those are places that are kind of famous for opening their borders. I actually think that it's been too much, but I don't believe in fully closing them off. I think that legal immigration is important. I think I'll stay neutral. Reason is more important than maintaining our culture. It's weird. Like, I would never think of these two as a dichotomy where reason is on one hand and culture maintenance is on the other. Odd. I do value reason a lot. Maintaining our culture, I've never really cared that much about that, but I can appreciate it. I appreciate cultures being unique. I guess I'll slightly agree. It's weird. Like, I do feel like there's some active intent to destroy Western and U.S. culture, and I don't support that. I'm not sure if people that are in favor of doing that, even subconsciously, are using reason against the culture. It's a little unclear. I think I'll stay neutral. It's better to maintain a balanced budget than to ensure welfare for all citizens. No, I strongly disagree. Governments should be accountable to the international community. I'll slightly agree. I mean, Israel is a prime example now. Russia, we have an international community for a reason, and yet we have sovereignty also for a reason. So it's a balance. I'll slightly agree. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. I think I used to think this. I would say that both are bad. It's contextual, isn't it? It kind of depends on where and when we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that government regulates corporations so that they're not oppressive or too harmful. I'm going to stay neutral, though. It's like I'm not really making that distinction these days. They're both something to look out for. Churches should be taxed the same way other institutions are taxed. I'm going to slightly agree. I would probably have fully agreed with this before. There are certainly some loopholes and some nasty headlines I've seen in my lifetime that make me think this. But for-profit churches are really odd. Mega churches, people are getting rich through religion, is really weird to me. So I do think they should be taxed. other institutions. Yeah, I'll fully agree. Same-sex marriage should be legal. I fully agree with that. Still, traditions are of no value on their own. I used to say this, like when I was a teenager, I definitely would say this to my family. And now I can appreciate them. I've even realized as I grow up that I make my own traditions with people almost instinctively. And there is a value to just having a tradition. That's not to justify all traditions at all, but they do have some value on their own, actually. So I'll slightly disagree. It's important that we further my group's goals above all others. No, I disagree with this. But I'm not going to fully disagree because I think the game of politics, the art of politics, is all about coalitions and coalition building and interests and balancing interests. And so I will advocate for my own interests. I'll never advocate against my interests. I always try to be objective and think about, for instance, procedural fairness. That doesn't further my group's goals at all, but it's the fairest thing to do. I would never support, a hiring freeze on men because I'm a man. Why would I care to do that? And that's not procedurally fair. So, yeah, I disagree, but I'll leave some room there. Basic utilities like roads and electricity should be publicly owned. Yeah, in theory I agree, but I'm not sure about in practice. I think of utilities as a very important right in a wealthy place. It's something that most modern lives depend on. But you can't guarantee them to everybody if you don't have the ability to do that, if you don't have the infrastructure and the wealth of a nation to provide it. It can also go badly. Again, I'm thinking of Russia or China. I guess China's fine now, but making it publicly owned doesn't make it good. There is some accountability through a corporation. In LA here, I'm not sure if the LADWP is publicly owned. I think it is run by the city or the county, but yeah, I don't know. I'm going to stay neutral on this, I think. Oh, I guess I'll slightly agree. I definitely don't want to privatize for profit, these kind of things, but I want them to be run well. And corporations tend to run better with a stock or a profit motive than a lot of government institutions. So it's tricky. It's very important to maintain law and order. I am going to fully agree with this today. Law and order has become like a buzz phrase. It's so taken for granted by people like me, and I'm not taking it for granted anymore. I think it's very understandable that people want this, even if the stats show that, for instance, Washington, D.C. is the safest it's ever been. That feeling of law and order is very, very important on a fundamental level. And I think a lot of people that scold and chide conservatives on this, they're likely taking it for granted how safe and secure they actually feel because of laws and mores and customs. So yeah, I value law and order. I don't think that we should. I mean, that can obviously go overboard, but then it's really not law and order anymore. It's martial law is not law and order. That's something else to me. If we accept migrants at all, it's important that they assimilate into our culture. Yeah, I do agree with this. I think it's important that migrants assimilate, and I say that having migrated to a place before. It's important. I don't think that I think that I'll just leave it there. The means of production should belong to the workers who use them. It's so weird. This is a Marxist saying. I thought the whole point of a lot of Marxism was against property ownership. So what's this word belong mean in this sentence? I really, the more I think about these kind of phrases, the less I understand them. I mean, in concept, back to the utilities, like plumbing and water and electricity are like public goods, I would say, the common good that needs to be maintained for all people, and it's the government's job to ensure that that is the case. Even if it's run by a corporation, it should be regulated by the government to ensure that the water is clean, to make sure that it's affordable, to make sure that people have access to these kind of generic things that everybody should have access to. That doesn't mean that like how does the public own it? Like a baseball team or a sports franchise, I like this concept that like in European cities, that city quote owns their team. It's a socialized product so that the team can never move to a new city, versus in the US that does happen, and it's really shameful to me. You know, the Oakland Athletics have this terrible ownership that has taken the team away from Oakland. And there's some valid points in doing that, but there's also a real deep sense of pride in the city of Oakland for their team, and that shouldn't just be wrenched away from them. So in that sense, like, I would be more Marxist on that kind of point. But if we're talking about like tools or a factory, should the workers own the factory? I mean, that's a co-op, I suppose, cooperative ownership. I like that model. I'm not against it. But, you know, tool lending libraries, if I borrow a power tool and use it on my house, I'm not necessarily owning that tool, am I? Or maybe it is collective ownership. It's very vague. And I think this phrase is used in places it doesn't necessarily need to be used, like to just strike or to demand more, you know, like that's fine. Like workers' rights are generally a cause worth fighting, but I don't know if this phrase is the right kind of rallying cry in all those kind of situations. I'm going to stay neutral. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. I kind of agree slightly, to an extent. Genetic modification is a force for good, even on humans. I kind of agree. I support regional unions such as the European Union. I'm going to kind of agree, soft agree again. It's important that we think in the long term, beyond our lifespans. Yeah, fully agree. Inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth. Yeah, it is. I fully agree. I mean, I haven't heard a good argument against this, actually. I know it's kind of like, I think as a child I might have just assumed that this is bad. This sounds bad because of like trust fund kids and nepo babies and just getting so much privilege because they're born on third base kind of stuff. Look, an industrious person who generates wealth has the right to pass that wealth on down to his progeny and assure his legacy in the family. I don't think anyone else has the right to it. Prostitution should be legal. Fully agree. The United Nations should be abolished. I'll slightly disagree. There is like the United Nations, I think, is a corrupt institution at this point. I think it's ideologically captured. I think it's lost a lot of its sheen in terms of respectability, but the concept of it is extremely important, in my opinion. I think we do need a sort of world government or agreed upon way that the world should operate in terms of international laws and such. The UN is not the ideal form of that right now, but I don't know why we want to abolish it. We should clean it up. It's important that we maintain the traditions of our past. Important? I don't know. This is a conservative kind of cry. You know, the war on Christmas comes to mind. You know, some fighting against gay marriage comes to mind. And I don't care about any of that stuff. I think that traditions, when strong enough, do endure. I don't know how much care we need to give it and to ensure its endurance. I think that if it falls by the wayside, so be it. I'm not precious about most traditions. I'm not really precious about any traditions offhand. So I'm going to slightly disagree. Those with a greater ability to pay should receive better health care. I do agree with this. There's just... healthcare is like such a pat word to cover such a broad, complex thing. I mean, medical science advancements happen as the result of funding and research and development, and that stuff has to be covered, and that's usually covered by money paid by those who want it. It's inevitable. It's inevitable that nicer things go to there's gonna be a supply and demand equation of some sort in any theoretical thing like healthcare. So there's just no way to guarantee everyone the same healthcare. There's just no way to do it. So money is the way that we use money as a way to do that, and I think it's okay. The very existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. I identify a bit as a libertarian, and even this is too much for me. Statehood is an important thing. It's good to identify and name things and delineate dominion so that we can administer the world effectively. So I am going to strongly disagree. Wars do not need to be justified to other countries. Harkening back to that sense of the international community and how autonomous each sovereign state should be in regard to the international community. It helps if there's understandable justification. I do kind of disagree with this. I think that it's important to justify your war with other people so that they can understand you. Are you defending yourself? Are you an aggressor? This could be used to just be an aggressor, like Russia. We don't need to justify this to you. Yeah, you kind of do. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. I agree. In fact, I strongly agree. If I had $1 billion, I would want to make the world a better place for everyone, because a world that's better for everyone is better for me. Why would I want to hoard my wealth, flaunt it, and scoff at people at the bottom? Those people could resent me and come after me. It makes total sense. Hoarding money, the Panama Papers, I really dislike that. I think that even Occupy Wall Street, that was the last major leftist cause that I was in full support of. I just think it's a no-brainer to help other people out when you have so much. Publicly funded research is more beneficial to the people than leaving it to the market. The thing is that publicly funded research can also be corrupted. This is the problem with a lot of these ideas about the government. I'm not fully saying that the state is a threat to our liberties, but it doesn't ensure them either. That's the thing. States are institutions just like corporations are, and they can be ideologically captured or poisoned within their leaderships, just like corporations can. So, in a way, I've noticed that science and tech have become a bit captured by leftist politics, and those institutions have power to enforce those things. And I think that if it was left to the market, people would possibly vote with their wallets and opt for something else. So I don't think this is true. I'm going to stay neutral, though, because I don't think the other way either. I don't think that markets guarantee a better benefit in terms of research, though some competition is healthy. So maybe I do want to disagree with this slightly. Yeah, I'm going to slightly disagree. This is iffy here. I'm not sure where I really stand here. International aid is a waste of money. It's not a waste of money, theoretically. It does turn out to be a waste. For instance, with Gaza and Hamas, there's so much international aid funneled into Gaza. And depending on who you believe, it's either blocked by the IDF and wasted, or stolen by Hamas and wasted. So in either case, from both sides of that argument, that international aid is being wasted. But I'm not going to say that we should not provide aid. I just think that we should ensure that the aid is actually being received. It's not good enough to just spend it and walk away. So I'm going to disagree here, but just slightly. It's important to maintain our national sovereignty. It's funny because I think of Canada, which is like a very left-leaning country these days, and even Canadians feel very strongly that they deserve national sovereignty. They don't want to become the 51st state, as Trump has joked. And I think that that's valid of them to feel that way. I do think national sovereignty is important. I don't think it's always important. Puerto Rico, this is a big topic. It's tricky. I'm thinking of Spain. There's a national identity within Spain. There's several, actually. Should each of those nationhoods be acknowledged and have sovereignty? I don't know. The Federation of Spain makes sense to me as well, so I could go either way, but I have some sympathy for people that say this. Palestinians, that's a trickier one in my opinion. Anyway, let's move on. Drug use should be legalized or decriminalized. Fully agree. It would be safer, you guys. The sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. Yeah, I think as a kid I would have fully disagreed with this. And there is that famous quote from one of the founding fathers, something like, "Those who choose security over liberty deserve neither," or something like that. It's tricky. Terrorism sucks. I do think that it's important to fight it, protect people from it, insofar as that's legit. I very much value civil liberties. I don't think it's worth taking our shoes off at the airport just because one person was trying to bomb with their shoes or something. I'm going to slightly disagree. But again, in my opinion, we can have both things. We can have safety and liberty. It's just about how it's done. Security theater, for instance, is pointless. But good FBI, or even in Israel, all the background stuff that's being done in other buildings, I think is valid to protect people, so long as you're leaving most people alone. 34. Victimless crimes such as drug use should not be crimes at all. I'm going to slightly agree instead of fully agree. There probably are, suicide comes to mind, but there are victims in suicide, aren't there? The family members of the person. Drug use, it can be dangerous. So there's some logic to trying to control that behavior. I'm not sure if the law is the best way to do that. Yeah. But yeah, in general, I think this, but I'm going to just slightly agree. Halfway question. Maintaining family values is essential. I kind of have more sympathy for this kind of statement these days, but again, I'm not very rah-rah conservative about it. I think that the family is a fundamental unit within a constitutional republic, and that unit functions pretty well. But I don't know how much we need to maintain them or protect them. I think that families act in their own interests, and when all families do that, they tend to all get along. I don't know if we need to worry about this from the right wing. I think that those concerns are a bit overblown personally, but I can appreciate where they're coming from. When family values are threatened, I think we should look at that. I'm going to stay neutral. The freer the markets, the freer the people. I do basically fully agree with this at this point. Environmental regulations are essential. I'm going to agree, but I don't think I'm going to go full agreement. I'm just going to leave it like that. All people, regardless of factors like culture or sexuality, should be treated equally. Treated equally, yeah, absolutely, fully agree. It would be best if social programs were abolished in favor of private charity. Disagree. Fully or lightly? Fully disagree. Military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. Military action by our nation is often necessary. I don't know about often. It can be necessary. In Israel, I think this is the case. In the US, not quite. The US benefits from like very fortunate geography. But I can appreciate other countries not feeling that way. I'm going to slightly disagree. I think Israel is the only one that comes to mind where it's very clear that that's necessary to protect itself. It's important that we work as a united world to combat climate change. I'm going to slightly disagree. I think climate change is a valid target for activism to some degree, but not to the degree it is currently as the number one thing. I think that's overblown. So I don't think it's that important. I think the world can survive some amount of pollution in the next decade or next, half century. Tariffs on international trade are important to encourage local production. Yeah, so this question has become way more prescient than it was last time I took this test. I mean, they're not important to me. I'm going to slightly disagree. I mean, Trump obviously thinks so. I don't really understand the logic at all, but it's not really my thing. I'm going to slightly disagree. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. Fully agree. But that doesn't mean that ChatGPT is all good. This can go wrong for sure, but computers, automobiles, airplanes. Okay, the stronger the leadership, the better. This is vague, and I could see this being used for malice. Great leadership that looks subtle and uses a soft touch is also strong to me. So it's hard to say. Certainly, I don't believe in ruling with an iron fist all the time. I don't believe in corporal punishment. A parent can be strong without resorting to corporal punishment. But weak leadership is definitely bad. So I think I'll stay neutral because the question is framed badly. My religious values should be spread as much as possible. I'm disagreeing, but it's tricky because I'm like a secular person without religious values. But I do think that my secular values should be spread as much as possible. So that's tricky. I mean, that's the funny thing with like social justice. It's often become the religion for young people without religion. And they're certainly evangelical about their values. And maybe it's valid. Like, if you think that people are evil around the world and your liberal values are an antidote to that evil, it makes sense to be a pilgrim, to be what is that phrase when the Christian church would send people to places on behalf of Christianity? What is that called? it makes sense to evangelize in that case, but it's hypocritical, isn't it? I'm just going to slightly disagree. I think insofar as I have religious values that are more akin to Buddhism, perhaps, transcendental meditation could almost be seen as religious. My art that I've made could be seen spiritually. I do want to spread those messages, but I don't need to spread any dogma or magical thinking. A hierarchical state is best. I don't like this question. A hierarchical state is inevitable. I will slightly agree. It's important. It's more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. Yeah, I'll lightly agree to that. I'm not going to go gung-ho on that one. I would like to see a use case here. Our nation's values should be spread as much as possible. I actually do agree with this. I mean, I think World War II is a prime example where the US's values were spread to Germany and Japan, and that turned out great for everyone. I'm actually proud of the US's values. I tend to basically agree with them, and I think that they're generally good. The arguments against the US are these kind of like original sin arguments that applies to every country. So I'm taking those things less seriously. Obviously, the US has done terrible things in its history and even recently, but I think that the intent has been good versus other countries and values that are intentionally harmful. So I'm going to lightly agree. I don't think this is true of all nations. From each according to his ability to each according to his needs. I do basically agree with this Marxist message. No cultures are superior to others. I disagree with this. In fact, I strongly disagree. I think that, on a personal level, the subcultures that I'm into, I choose carefully. They kind of choose me, but I definitely have a superiority complex if it comes down to something like caring about music versus caring about wrestling. And I do judge a little bit people that are really into wrestling. To each their own, fair enough, but I think that's an inferior subculture. And I think that's true worldwide. I think that some cultures are definitely inferior. Abortion should be prohibited in most oral cases. Fully disagree. The general populace makes poor decisions. This is so vague. This is just almost unfairly vague. There's no way to really... it's just a very cynical take on humanity. I'm going to stay neutral. Obviously they can, but I'm going to stay neutral. My nation is great. I would not say that. Do I disagree? I'm going to stay neutral. That's such a weird phrase. I'm not a jingoist. I like U.S. values in the Constitution, freedom of speech as an easy example, but I think our nation is very troubled at the same time. I'm not bragging about our nation's cultural superiority. I'm proud of it, though, in terms of Hollywood and music history and other cultural things. But we're flawed as well. Society was better many years ago than it is now. I'm not, I am prone to nostalgia like most of us are, but I wouldn't really go this far. The 90s for sure, I remember being very carefree. I was so young. That was a more innocent time, pre 9/11 for instance, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it was much better. I think that we live in a great time with technology and everything being what they are. So I'm going to slightly disagree. Government intervention is a threat to the economy. No, I don't see that. This sounds like a dog whistle, if you will, for laissez-faire capitalism. I think that regulations are important. It can go too far, of course. Planned economies have their own faults, so I think mixing economies intelligently is the way to go, and that takes a lot of care. Research should be conducted on an international scale. Makes me think of COVID. Was that done on an international scale? I think Pfizer and German brands were kind of leading the way. Israel as well. I think that those kind of countries were sharing info. The U.S. and Israel and Germany. In general, yes. I mean, if you want to pull the human race, it's important to tackle. It's important to reach a lot of international countries and communities, right? So I kind of do agree with this. I guess I'll fully agree. I mean, it depends on the research. It depends. But I will agree. I think knowledge, the pursuit of truth and knowledge, need to cast a wide net. It's necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. Fully agree. Quality education is a right of all people. I certainly don't want to disenfranchise anybody from education, and I worry about homeschooling and such, but you can't walk into the Sahara Desert and declare this kind of thing. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, if there's no infrastructure, how are you going to ensure it as a right? You're not born with that right. You are born with the good fortune into a society that has a good public education program, in which case it should be extended to you. I believe in bringing as many people into good things as possible, but that doesn't mean that those people brought in have the right to them. It's just that when you have something good, it is in the best interest of the world to broaden it. I'm going to stay neutral. Again, there's a supply-demand thing there. Sex outside marriage is immoral. Disagree. A united world government would be beneficial to mankind. Yeah, I basically agree with this. Climate change is currently one of the greatest threats to our way of life. I disagree with this. Sure, currently it's a threat, I suppose. I think it's vastly overblown, so I'm going to lightly disagree. All authority should be questioned. I fully agree. I support single-payer universal healthcare. I do think there needs to be this kind of option. Fully agree. Children should be educated in religious or traditional values. I'm going to disagree. I'll slightly disagree. I'm not going to fully disagree because I do think it's inevitable that traditions seep into an education and upbringing of a child, and I think that's a good thing. I think avoiding that would be almost impossible and weird, but forcing a lot of religious stuff on kids is definitely bad. Democracy is more than a decision-making process. Yeah. We use this word democracy very broadly. I mean, the U.S. is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic, as are most democracies. Most countries that use the word democracy are authoritarian. Democratic Republic of the Congo, for instance. We're using it very lightly to mean a lot more things than just a decision-making process. Gun ownership should be prohibited for those without a valid reason. I disagree. I mean, a valid reason. Feeling secure in your own home is a valid reason. Anyone can say that. This just reeks a bit of tyranny to me. I'll slightly disagree. I'd like to close loopholes and such. Even when protesting an authoritarian government, violence is not acceptable. Fully agree. Depends on how authoritarian it is. Uprisings historically have happened, and they've usually been very sympathetic, or often been, I don't know how usual. But nowadays, I think this is a rallying cry to just run amok and wreak havoc, and I don't like to call the U.S. an authoritarian government is a real stretch. It's important that the government follows the majority opinion, even if it's wrong. Again, this is where democracy is becoming very gray, isn't it? Trump was voted in by a Democratic majority, and his policies poll well, and I think that's proper. I think it's unfortunate if the country, or yeah, I think if, again, ideological capture occurs in an institution and it's run against the majority opinion, that is bad usually. But it's tricky. I think it's more that the government does the right thing and has good justification. So even if only 49% of the people agree, so long as it's on the right side of things, and that is tricky to figure out. That's what politics is all about. I'm going to stay neutral. Military spending is a waste of money. It's definitely not a waste of money. It does waste money in the USA, for sure, but that doesn't mean that military spending is a waste of money. Regardless of political, this is the last question, regardless of political opinions, it's important to side with your country. I mean, whatever. Yes, in a sense. Also, no. Like, it doesn't really matter. You can leave your country, hopefully, if you want to. I do find myself these days siding with my country, even though I don't support the president, per se. I have different political opinions, but I can appreciate that a lot of the country has other priorities than I do, and I can respect that. And if I didn't, I would leave, as I have before. All right, I'm going to say neutral and finish. Let's see what we get. So there's 4 axes here: economic, diplomatic, civil, and societal. And I've scored more for equality over markets on the economic axis. I've scored slightly toward the world versus the nation on diplomacy. I've sided strongly with liberty over authority. And I've sided with progress over tradition. And this is basically how I've always been. So I haven't really changed since I took this 5 years ago. My closest match is social liberalism, which is, I think, what it's always been. I was expecting to care more about markets than equality, and I think those are where you might have inferred my descriptions as favoring markets but still caring about equality. So I think on that economic axis I've changed probably the most. I might have been even more in favor of equality in the past, but I still do identify. I'll read these descriptions and then say goodbye. Those with higher equality scores believe the economy should distribute value evenly among the citizenship. See, not evenly, not equity, just fairly. That's a distinction that I would make. They tend to support progressive tax codes, sure. Social programs, yes. And high value socialism, no. So I do disagree, like, with Zoran Mamdani on a lot of stuff, even though I generally agree with him on taxes and social programs. Those with higher market scores believe the economy should be focused on rapid growth. No. They tend to support lower taxes, privatization, deregulation, and high values laissez-faire capitalism. That's not me. Those with higher nation scores are patriotic and nationalist. They often believe in an aggressive foreign policy, valuing the military strength, sovereignty, and high values geopolitical dominance. Not me. In fact, the countries that are like that are the countries that I dislike. Those with higher world scores are cosmopolitan and globalist. This feels like flattery. They often believe in a peaceful foreign policy, emphasizing diplomacy, cooperation, integration, and at high values, a one world government. Yeah. Though that one world government thing verges on authoritarianism. That's my skepticism there. Liberty. With higher liberty scores, people want strong civil liberties. They tend to support democracy and oppose state intervention in personal lives. Me. Note that this refers to civil liberties, not economic liberties. Yes. Authority. Those with higher authority scores want strong state power. They tend to support state intervention in personal lives, government surveillance, and high values censorship and autocracy. I'm against this, and I think the left, the woke left, represents this a lot, and I think that's bad. Societal. Those with higher tradition scores believe in traditional values and strict adherence to a time-honored moral code. Many are religious and seek golden age as being behind us. Not me. Those with higher progress scores believe in social change and the upheaval of traditional norms. Many are also atheists and see the golden age as being in front of us, i.e. the future. Yeah, see, like, I kind of do identify with that, but I do not identify as being a progressive anymore. All right, guys, that's my score. I'll leave it there. Until next time, ciao.